Hey YouTube, instead of doing another basic team in a terrible cup, I put the question out to you, what do you want to see for a video this morning? And the top answer was how to use PV Poke and how to go through it and stuff like that, and which I linked a video, which I already did. So I'll link that in the description. I already did a video on how to use PV Poke, how to use the rankings, how to use the team builder, how to use the battle system. So I've done all that. I'll link that in the description below. But someone else said do a beyond the rankings, like you do like a beyond the hype video. So for those of you who are new to the channel, I do a beyond the hype video where I like go in depth on a Pokemon, just show you like its pros and cons and cut beyond the this thing is meta, you need to use it and just like really focus on like what are its strengths, what are its weaknesses, and why it's ranked the way it is, and if it's over or underrated, stuff like that. And like do that for the PV Poke rankings. And I'm like, that's kind of an interesting idea because there are two things that define the meta in GBL, quite honestly, and it is PV Poke and its content creators. PV Poke gives rankings from obviously like the top Pokemon for Great League, Ultra League, Master League. That gives content creators ideas of what to use, and then we put out teams, and then people copy those teams. So people like check the rankings and use their own rankings, and copy content creators' teams. So between the PV Poke and content creators, we sort of define the meta. So it's interesting to like go through this list and see like what I would consider overrated and underrated. So I don't know how I'm going to do this. I just like the idea. There's already a couple Pokemon that I really wanted to talk about. The first one being Carbink at number 6, which has already dropped a bit, and I think it needs to drop way more, quite honestly. So let's just go into it. I'll just kind of go. I don't have an idea of how I'm going to do this. Don't have a time idea. So we'll just go with it, and then we'll see how many I can get through. So this is the rankings of PV Poke. Basically saying like Lickitung is the best Pokemon all around Pokemon in the Great League, right? So the best Pokemon overall across multiple roles is how they define it. They have typings, moving, and stats to succeed as top contender. So the first question you need to ask yourself, if you don't know why Pokemon are ranked so high or not so high, this is sort of like a 101 of what you need to do for understanding how strong a Pokemon is. And this is for any Pokemon over any league, realistically. But I'm just going to do the Great League because it's the one that comes up the most. So why is Lickitung top ranked? So there are 3 to 4 things that I look at personally when I am looking at the rankings of a Pokemon. So the first thing I will always look at is the stat product. So I have said multiple times in the Great League, when I'm looking at an overall stat product, 2000 is sort of like the bare minimum sweet spot for overall strength of a Pokemon. Doesn't really matter if that is like Lickitung is very obviously defense heavy, right? Super high stamina, okay defense, meh attack. Under 100 attack is not amazing, but you really make up for it with the stamina for 2283 overall stat product, which is amazing. Overall stat product is great. Obviously this you can't just look at the overall stat product because there's stuff like Chansey, which has an overall stat product of 3188 because it has 421 stamina, right? So you need to use your best judgment of like, what does the overall mean? And basically the overall is like, if it has a solid mix of attack, defense, stamina with that 2300, it's great. So some things like why Noctowl was so strong before the nerf was same thing here, right? 105 attack, 120 defense, 167 stamina, 21 overall. Think about Lanturns probably right there as well. Lantern like number 9. 104, 194 for 2131, right? So, and Medi with the XL is probably around the same thing. Yep, 106, 139, 140, 120, 103, right? So that is your first indication. It doesn't mean that if it's below that sort of threshold that it's bad, but you need to offset a lower overall stat product with usually a higher attack and good fast and charge moves. And the prime example is Swampert. So Swampert's overall stat product is 1816. This is the shadow version. Same thing. It doesn't change your overall, it just adds 20% that thing there. So 122 attack, 108 defense, 136 stamina. So obviously a much higher attack than the other Pokemon I just looked at, with a much lower just generally defense and stamina for a lower overall stat product. But it is ranked number 5 in 8 shadow, non-shadow, because the second thing I look at is its fast and charge moves. And you can go here and show stats directly. And what I like about this, there's 2 ways to look at stats of a move. You go show stats there, or in the top right corner where there's 3 lines, there's a moves right? So it'll show you all the moves. There's the fast moves here, and then you can link it to charge moves here. Why I actually like doing the show stats better is because these moves just show you the base stats without same type attack bonus. And I'll give you a perfect example of Hydro Cannon. So Hydro Cannon is a 40 energy move for 80 damage for 2 damage per energy. So again, already one of the best charge moves in the game. But when you add on same type attack bonus, which gives you a 20% bonus, that Hydro Cannon 40 becomes 96 damage, right? So 80 times 20%, another 16 added on is 96 damage. So you're actually doing 96 damage with the Hydro on Swampert because you are water and you get that same type attack bonus. So your damage per energy is now 2.4. So why something like Swampert is so strong is because it has Mud Shot, one of the best fast moves for energy generation, 4.5 energy per turn. So for every 1 Mud Shot you do, you get 9 energy. And then you have this really low energy, super high damage per energy, 2.4 damage per energy per. And when you're looking at damage per energy, at least when I look at it, there's a couple things that I consider. And this is where we'll go back just to all of them just to look at. So when you're looking at damage per energy, you can look at it just straight damage per energy, or you can look at it as a what is the damage per energy per the energy used overall. So nukes like Brave Bird, Overheat, Draco Meteor, we know they're nukes. We know that doesn't matter what the energy is. Lower energy like V creates for 40 for a higher one with like Draco Meteor 65. It's a nuke. It's going to be well over 2 damage per energy. A lot of these come with lowering your defense or attack, right? So that's a trade-off of those. Then you get into what I call the community day moves, which are just so overpowered. Blast Burn, Hydro Cannon, we just went over Frenzy Plant, right? So Frenzy Plant 45 for 100, 2.22. Blast Burn 50 for 110. And then we just went over Hydro Cannon, which was 40 and 80. And these are your community day moves, which are super low energy. 40 for Hydro, 45 for Frenzy, 50 for Blast Burn, with really, really high damage per output where you're at that 2 plus damage per energy. So when you are at a 2 plus damage per energy for like 40 to 50 energy moves, like that is extremely, extremely strong moves. For the most part, then you get into what I call, I don't know what I call it, but it's basically what I believe to be a good damage per energy ratio for the energy that it takes to do that damage. So I'll give you an example right here. Hyper Beam on Diggersby. 1.87 damage per energy, 150 damage overall, which is great. Diggersby does have Mud Shot, which is a fast energy generating fast move. It takes 80 energy to get those. So even with a super fast energy generating move, it's still an 80. It's still 9 turns to get there, which is a long time to get to the move. And Diggersby has the strength of being bulky enough so you can probably get to it. I personally do not like running these like 1.7, 1.8 damage per energy moves when the energy is like 60 to 65 plus. There's some Pokemon that it just works for, like Return Sableye, 70 energy for return. Like you just kind of need that coverage move. But if I can like avoid these moves, like your Blizzard, your Zap Cannons, your Solar Beams, your Hyper Beams, all these sort of like high 70, 80, even nukes, I would prefer that because there's other sort of like 1.7 damage moves here that are much lower energy that I think are just way better to use. And just some examples, look, like you can go right to like Grass Knot and Power Whip, which for like 1.8 damage is only 50 energy. And then you got some like obviously Body Slam. I talked about how like broken Body Slam can be on Vigoroth and Lickitung because you get the 35 energy for 60 damage. You add Stab onto that for Vigoroth and Lickitung, and you got a really high, super high damage per energy bump for a 35 energy move, right? So these are the kinds of moves that I like. The 1.7 moves with like Hydro Pump. These are all too high for my liking. Hydro Pump, Gunk Shot, just not a great ratio for me personally. Even 1.73 is overall good, just not for me personally. Then you get into what, like, I think these are like the average moves, quite honestly. You're looking at like the 1.6 range for like a 40 to 50 energy move, right? And these are a lot of moves that you see out there. Everything from like Last Resort, Thunderbolt, Surf, X Scissor, Dig, Scorching Sands, Sludge Bomb. These are all in your 40 to 50 energy moves. So hovering at the 1.6 damage per energy. And these are like what I call just like overall just like decent. Wow, I'm so creative with my titles. But basically just like decent moves where you have just like 1.6-ish damage per energy for like a 40 to 50 energy move, which is okay. When you get into these lower damage per energy moves like 1.4, one of two things need to happen. It either needs to be like your only option as one of your quick charge moves, so like Aqua Tail on Dragonair, or you need to have one of these attacks lowered, so like Liquidation, lowering your opponent's attack by 30%, Crunch, lowering your opponent's attack by defense by 30% chance, Boost, Night Slash Boost, like there's a Night Slash for 35, 50, 1.42 is not great, but 12.5% chance of raising your attack by 2 is good. So like when I'm using these like 1.4 damage per energy moves, I do like some sort of like secondary ability on it, or if it's like the only move I can use. Why I think a lot of Pokemon aren't strong. So like let's just go with Ice Punch. So Ice Punch, they gave Icy Wind to Poliwrath, which is just a huge upgrade because it's basically the same damage but just like lowering your opponent's attack 50% or 100% chance right here. 45 for 60 for 100% chance of lowering your attack. So very similar damage per energy but 100% chance of lowering your attack. So that's why that increased substantially. You can't buff Ice Punch. I think the punches need buffing, but you can't buff Ice Punch because of Medicham. So again, these punches, 1.37 is not a good damage per energy ratio for the move energy, but it gives you great coverage on Medi, which is why Ice Punch is great on Medi. But for the most part, like these punches are not good moves overall. So it's kind of a tricky situation where like these probably should be buffed, but you can't do that with Medi. And then when you get down into the 1.2, 1.1 and below, these are moves that just need buffs. Honestly, these moves need buffs, unless they 100% chance do something like this, like 100% Psychic Fangs, 100% chance of lowering your opponent's defense, Poison Fang, same sort of thing. Like then you can kind of get away with that. I still think it should be bumped up a little bit. They nerfed Poison Fang because of Nidoqueen in the past. I forget how many seasons ago that was now. But anyways, that is the moves. So two things. So we got the stat product that I look at first. We got those move sets. And again, move sets, I just kind of explained like what I look for in the move set. So why something like Swampert is so strong is because you have a very, very, very hard hitting stab, 2.4 damage move with 40 energy there. And then you got even harder hitting, same like lower damage per energy, but still like a over 2 damage per energy for a 65 move, Earthquake. So like just great moves with a good fast move, which offsets your a stat product. So that's 2. The third thing I look at is your typings and your weaknesses and honestly, I don't even look at resistances quite honestly as much as I do just your weaknesses, because I'm more of like playing against your weaknesses as opposed to like playing against your strengths. But that's just my perspective, but you can do it your own way. And why Swampert, same thing. Why Swampert is so strong is there's only one weakness, and that's grass. A lot of the stuff that you were weak to with the other one, like water weak to electric, gets offset by the ground typing. The ground typing weak to water gets offset by water, right? So, and ice offset by the water. So only one weakness, and that's why Swampert is so strong. And that is why Lickitung is so strong, because Lickitung is a normal typing, and it only has one weakness in fighting, right? So that's what makes these like certain typing Pokemons strong. Is there like a set rule for me when I look at typing? No. It's just based on feel. Like Cresselia is an interesting one, number 2. I think Cresselia can be very strong. I think it can also be very overrated. Because there is a decent amount of dark and ghost in this meta. And when I get to I wouldn't call it like a truly overrated, because again, has that 2400 stat product. If you look at the charge moves, you have a very, very, again, like a Mudshot, very, very fast charging Psycho Cut, and like a 1.8 damage, 50 energy move for coverage. And then you have your Future Sight, which everyone's running for 2.2 damage for 65 energy. So like overall moveset is quite good. Your stat product is quite good. Your typing as a psychic, yes, there are some ghosts and dark, but there's some, but it's like not like the entire meta. So I think it's like kind of appropriately positioned here. Before I start talking about Pokemon, is there anything else here that I look at? No, I think those are basically the stuff I do. I do kind of run a quick analysis on the matchups. So like you can just click Crest versus the Great League and it will give you a quick breakdown of like it versus the main meta. You might want to do this just to see like what your weaknesses are, because it'll help you with team building. But this doesn't like show me whether it's, I shouldn't say that, because I'm gonna put down, I'm actually gonna put down Carving for this exact same reason that I'm just about to say I don't care for. But it is. There is something I do care, and it is your place in the meta. And Carbink was released, and it became one of the instant dominant Pokemon. 2600 overall stat product, super defensive heavy Pokemon. Typings, so there's super overall. That I'll talk about typings in a second, but like stat product, because you have so much bulk here, right? Your defense is so high. So you got like a rock throw, which slower energy generation, but you can kind of stand with it, but like hard damage per energy. And then again, a 45 and 60 energy moves with over 2 damage per energy. So like really good charge moves, hard hitting, fast move, insane bulk. And at the time, a decent answer to some of the meta that you were seeing. It was ranked number 2. It's down to 6. I think 6 is overrated. I think it is nowhere close to being a top 10 Pokemon. And the reason for that is your current weaknesses of water, ground, and steel. Grass, man, but like those 3 are the meta. And what they don't show here, and this is where if you haven't used it, you need to pull out the matchups a bit. Your other losses, you're also losing hard to fighters, because the fighters will resist the rock moves, which is your main fast move. And because you're a slower energy generating fast move, it takes a while to get to your charge moves. And yes, you have bulk, but the problem now with Carbink is based on your weaknesses that I talked about. Let's look at the meta. Whiscash, one of the top meta Pokemon in this league. Poliwrath, one of the top meta Pokemon. Skarmory getting double super effective Steel Wings off, one of the top meta. Azumarill has jumped back up. Cress is a top ranked Pokemon. You still have Lanterns and Glygars everywhere. Annihilate says you lose here. I think it's because you get off like multiple Moonblasts before they get off like multiple Shadow Balls. Yeah, and this is a bait. So let me see if it actually changes. Like if you don't bait Rock Slide and just go Moonblast, will you be able to take it out? You can't. You actually lose. So it is a bait dependent move. So if you actually throw Moonblast on Annihilate straight up and they shield that Moonblast, they are going to outpace you with the counters and Shadow Balls. And counters are neutral because you're half flying, half rock. So that one's kind of like a fake win there. So just between like the main meta, like again, the main meta is Poliwrath, Annihilate, Whiscash, Skarmory, and you just lose to all of them. So there's really no point of running Carbink right now in this meta, unless you have 2 answers for everything that I just mentioned, because that is the meta. So for me, something like Carbink would be very overrated at the number 6 spot right now. Not because of the stat product, not because of the moveset, not because of typing in general, just because of the typing in the current meta makes it overrated for me. For that same reason, this is the first time I'm ever going to say this. I think Swampert is overrated. I much prefer using the majority of the other Pokemon over Swampert right now. And the main reason for that is like Swampert can still be very, very deadly in this meta. If you run a Shadow Swampert, you can beat Lickitung because it'll take 2 Hydros to take it out. It's not the case with non-Shadow Swampert. You need 3 to take out Lickitung. So when you have Lickitung as everywhere as the main meta, you have Cress with the Grass Knot that'll basically one-shot. You have Poliwraths everywhere, which will resist your Hydro Cannon. You're still taking neutral to their Scalds because of your half ground. There's been an uptick in Flyers. And not that Flyers are like a direct answer to Swampert, but like it limits all your movesets to Hydro Cannon, right? Because Mudshot and Earthquake are resisted. So that kind of puts you back there. So I think Swampert is a little overrated. It can still be very, very, very strong overall. Like I would not move it outside of like the top like 10 to 15. It's still like definitely a Pokemon that I would use overall. But quite honestly, if I'm using a Mudboy first, I'm using Shadow Whiscash, which I don't have, but I'd use the Shadow Whiscash first, and I'm using Quagsire second, and then I'm using Swampert as a third. Because I honestly like those other two right now more than I like Swampert. Annihilate at 14, I think, no, I actually think Annihilate at 14 is appropriately ranked. Where did Medi fall off to? Medi fell to 21, which makes Annihilate as the second best fighter behind. Actually, now it's now the number 1 ranked fighter ahead of both Poliwrath. Yeah, it's the number 1 fighter ahead of Poliwrath and Medi. It's definitely a top 3 for sure. It's got 2 things going for it. The stat product, again, under the 2000, 1800, more attack heavy Pokemon, we know that. 2 things got it going for it. It still has like an okay stamina, right? For an 1800 attack Pokemon, for 1800 overall Pokemon, the 137 stamina is actually not bad, which I always say kind of makes it sneaky bulky, even though it's not bulky. But it's just like, like one charge move is not going to take you out like it would like a Primeape, for example. And then the moveset, again, counter, one of the best fast moves in the game, just having that like great energy and damage combo there. And then Shadow Ball, you are half ghost, so having a 55 energy 2.18 Shadow Ball is huge. Not that it's limiting, but again, Night Slash is generally not a good move, but if you get the boost, it can be very, very deadly. And then Ice Punch does give you coverage. Again, the punches aren't amazing moves, but it gives you nice coverage. So I think Annihilate is actually appropriately ranked in this meta. Abomasnow is always an interesting one to me. I have never ever had success. I shouldn't say ever, but I rarely have success with Abomasnow in the Great League. And I think it's because it's again very limited with its overall stat product 1877. Its moveset is okay overall. Like you got some very high damage per energy. This is the Shadow version. Is the non-Shadow the exact same? Let me see 1 sec. Because the non-Shadow Abomasnow is ranked much lower. Yeah, okay. So that just answered my question. The damage per energy on these charge moves is taken into account with the Shadow bonus, right? So again, 35 energy 1.9 and 55 energy 1.96 is still good in and of itself. It just gets much better with the Shadow version. I think, again, where this Pokemon is limited is you got the under 1800 overall stat, 1900 overall stat product here. And I think it's just the typing that kills it. And here you go, 7 weaknesses. Fire, obviously you see not a ton of fires. A couple upticks in incinerate users. Fighters everywhere. Flying everywhere. Poison and rock not everywhere, but around. Steel around, right? So there's just, with that many weaknesses in this current meta, given your glassiness and inability to like flip a ton of matchups, it makes it a little trickier to run Abomasnow right now. So I think Abomasnow is probably a little overrated in the Great League right now. cognizant of time that I've been talking for 25 minutes. Maybe I'll just stop at like 50 and then we'll do others like when I think about how I actually want to do this on another day. I think I spent the majority of time actually took in like, I think this is like 75% of like what to look for when you're looking at a Pokemon's ranking, and then 25% of just like a couple Pokemon that I think are quickly over and underrated. Yeah, so I'm gonna stop there. Yeah, I think the rankings are pretty accurate for the state of the current meta. I think Lickitung and Gligar are great safe swaps. I think your Quagsire and Whiscash and Annihilate are top 10 meta Pokemon. I think Azumarill and Medi and Superior are definitely like second level strong here. Dragons, again, second tier level. Dragonair's super strong in this meta. Golbat and stuff is a little like I think overrated in this because it's probably got a lot of Poison Fang baits then landing Shadow Balls. So I think it's probably a bit overrated, but for the most part, I think like the top 50 is a pretty accurate representation of the current state of the Great League meta, and I think accurately ranked. Now, league turnover in 2 weeks, right? We have 2 more weeks left in the GBL season. Catch Cup this upcoming week, which I'll do top teams tomorrow, and then I think it's an open week for the last week. So we'll get new moves, we'll get new updates. I will do it beyond the hype of looking at these new moves. But yeah, that's basically it. So that's basically how I look at Pokemon to understand like, is this thing gonna have play? And that's why I was able to look at other Pokemon like Annihilate and stuff like that, and just kind of like look at it and be like, okay, I kind of have a feel of how this is gonna work before I get into it, and that was the case. So that is it. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned for top teams tomorrow, and I will see you guys in the next one.